What if the next generation of computers wasn't made of silicon, but of living human neurons? Not simulated neurons, not artificial neural networks inspired by biology, but actual brain cells grown in a lab, connected to electrodes, and used to process information. That's not science fiction anymore. It's happening right now at a Swiss startup called FinalSpark. And today's guest is one of the scientists making it real. Welcome to Data Science with Sam. I'm your host, Sam, and this is one of the most mind-bending conversation we have had on this show. My guest for today's episode is Dr. Ewelina Kurtys, a neuroscientist with a PhD in brain imaging from the University of Groningen, postdoctoral researcher at King's College London, 20 of many peer-reviewed publications, and a career arc that took her from academia through medical imaging into the deep frontier of biocomputing. She's a scientist and strategic advisor at FinalSpark, the Swiss startup building what is believed to be the world's remotely accessible biocomputing platform, where a living human brain organoids serve as processors. And she also founded Sync, a mental wellness startup combining neuroscience and technology. Ewelina, welcome to the show. Please feel free to share anything else that I wasn't able to cover.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Let's start with your story because it's genuinely unusual. Your journey into this field is incredibly unique. Before we dive into the science, could you share how you became involved in the world of biological computing and how that led to your role at FinalSpark?
So I did my PhD in medical imaging, in brain imaging. So I was focusing always on the brain. It was something what really fascinates me. And I always wanted to work in industry after my PhD, but I never really wanted what, I never really knew what I should do. So I was searching for my way. And then I discovered the fascinating world of startups. And I started to work on medical imaging initially in some of the startup in London. And this is how I discovered artificial intelligence. Because when I was doing my research, I never had a lot of data. So of course we do much more manual work in research. But when you work in industry with medical imaging, you have huge amounts of data. So this is perfect field for automation. And actually there was a lot of discussion in the imaging field at that time about deep learning, about AI. So this is how I realized about this, because before, I heard about AI, but I really didn't know too much about this. And I was attending one of the conferences in London, AI Summit, where I had a chance to meet the founders of FinalSpark and many others. Actually, I could see a lot of applications of AI which are beyond imaging, medical imaging, beyond my field. So that was kind of like shocker for me, because I realized that you can do a lot of cool stuff outside my own research. You know, it's not only what I did in the lab was fascinating, but there are many other things. So I become really fascinated with AI. I studied this by myself and did some courses. I even learned some basics of Python coding. And this is how I started to work on commercial applications of artificial intelligence. And now I also work with FinalSpark on the future of AI. So this is artificial intelligence, but also neuroscience. So this combines these two fields, which my academic background and my industry experience. So this is like kind of perfect mix for me. And yes, I was really fascinated by this idea. I've never heard about something like that before. And I think that it's interesting. You never get bored when you work on such a project. And usually the people who are involved, like the whole FinalSpark team, are very nice people. So I think there are a lot of benefits of working on such a deep tech crazy project. So this is how I get involved. Yes. And this is why I'm actually interested in this kind of topics.
Thanks, thanks, Dr. Ewelina, for sharing your professional journey with my listeners, especially to my listeners who are also interested in computer imaging, but mainly have biology background. I mean, they can also kind of like follow your career path and learn a little bit about technology, especially like you mentioned, you learned a bit about Python programming and stuff. That'll definitely take their career into different trajectory. Thanks for sharing that with us. Now, moving on to the next question. FinalSpark highlights how the human brain uses only around 20 watts, while a comparable silicon-based AI system can require megawatts of power. Why is this energy gap so important? And at what moment did you realize that neurons, not silicon, might be the path to the next computing revolution?
So FinalSpark was founded in 2014 by Fred Jordan and Martin Kutter. They are two Swiss entrepreneurs. They also have PhDs in signal processing, so this is applied mathematics. And they had a dream to build thinking machine. That was long before ChatGPT, and everyone was dreaming about building some kind of AI which could, for example, hold a conversation. But after doing some fundamental research in artificial intelligence, they realized that it actually costs really a lot because AI on the principle is not complicated. I mean, of course, you still need excellent engineers, but everyone can use neural networks. There is no particular secrets in this. And actually, what really makes a difference in the AI projects is the budget, because when you want to make a better AI model, you need more money for the servers, for the training, also for the model usage. It costs a lot of money. So they realize that this is race for big companies, big players, and small startup. If they want to make a difference, they will never have a budget of a huge corporation. So they have to be more innovative. So they started to think about some alternatives. And our first employee, Jean-Marc, he's an engineer, but he had a chance to work with Professor Markram, which is a famous neuroscientist, also working in Switzerland. And he had some experience with living neurons. So they were thinking, okay, maybe this is a good starting point. Let's try neurons. This seems to be crazy idea and new. And that was very new at that time, indeed. We have very few competitors in the whole world. So indeed, that was very original approach and very innovative. So yes, so why living neurons? Because they are 1 million times more energy efficient, and because we have problems with AI scalability. So in the future, we can expect, we are using increasing amounts of AI more and more. And the more we use it, the more it costs. So it's kind of expected that one day we might have a problem, or maybe AI will not be accessible for everyone. So it's necessary actually to figure out some alternatives. And many people are working on that. There are many ideas for that. People have ideas on how to improve software for AI or even hardware. There are many new chips being developed. But we want to make a revolution. So it will be not a small change in AI, but actually huge change, which will drastically decrease the energy used by uses by AI by providing totally new hardware, totally new computing substrates, which will be living neurons, the same as we have in our brains.
Got it. Now that's really fascinating. From the listeners over here who've been already studied neurons, they would definitely find it fascinating that there will be an alternate power resource that we can tap into in the form of human neurons to power our computers in future. So
No,
this
no,
is
no, no.
definitely futuristic. Yeah.
Sorry, it's important to say it's not a power, it's processor. This is big difference.
Sir.
So neurons don't provide
Mhm.
energy to the computer. They are alternative processors. So this is what
Processor.
people often, they miss it. So you just build alternative computer, which will
Mhm.
use less energy.
Got it. Yeah. So
Mhm.
correction to our listeners, it's mainly the computing processor units that's gonna be
Yes,
replaced or alternate parts. It's not like
yes,
powering the human neurons, rather it's being used as a processing unit. Like, I would say like a CPU and GPU is gonna be more of like a
exactly.
human.
Yes, this is a new CPU, GPU. Yes, absolutely.
Now, since we're talking about biological neural network, like you emphasized on that in the FinalSpark blogs. I've read a few of
Mhm.
them. So these biological neural networks are mainly self-organizing, continuously learning system, and eventually, like we basically came up with artificial neural network based on the same concept, right? But how do you actually program, simulate, or shape these neuron cultures to perform computational tasks? Like how you can do the transformation.
So actually, neurons are processing information, doing computation all the time in our brains. So the fact that we can talk today is because our neurons are processing information. So they do this all the time. But the question is, big question, how to control this process. So when we have neurons on the dish, of course they do what they want, kind of. This is dynamic system, so it changes over time. And it changes through interaction with the environment, because neurons are plastic. So as our brain is plastic, we learn through every actual experience every day, and our brain is changing. And the same, and this is intrinsic property of neurons in general. So also in the lab, when we do experiments, they are changing all the time. Neurons are plastic. But the big question is how to control this process, how to make neurons perform this task we wanted. And for the moment, the biggest challenge, in my opinion, in this field is learning in vitro and to figure out how neurons encode information. So there are a lot of studies actually also in digital simulation, and also there are a lot of new hardwares which are imitating neurons. So people do a lot of research trying to understand the workings of neurons and how we can use it for computation. But nobody really knows how neurons encode information. So what does it mean? So that means that we don't know what this activity means exactly. We can measure this activity, we can see how it's processed, the signals, but we do not know what does it mean. So when you want to encode some knowledge, for example, some words into the neurons, we do not know how to encode this. And we don't want to do hard coding. We want to figure out the way how neurons encode information. And this is for the moment the biggest challenge. So it's not actually transformation of neurons, but it's actually our understanding of how they work.
Got it. So now since you mentioned that, our understanding of the human neurons, that took me to the engineering perspective of that. So
Yes.
how do you convert like a digital signals to biological ones and read the output back? Is it like more of like a binary related stuff, or like what does the, input output interface of a biocomputer actually look like?
But this is actually quite easy because we put neurons on electrodes. So neurons are analog signal, and of course in the computer we have digital signal. We put neurons on the electrodes, and electrodes are connected to analog to digital converter.
Analog to digital,
So all
okay.
the signal is converted to the digital. So all we measure through the electrodes, all the spikes, this is how we call the activity of neurons. It's electrical spikes. We can measure this through electrodes and convert to the digital system and send it to the computer. And then in the computer, researcher can write Python code to execute some experiments or to analyze the data. And if we want to send signals to neurons, so we also send them electrical signals because this is how they communicate. So we also, through the same electrodes as we measure, we also can send a signal. And we basically code in Python the exact procedure on which kind of signal and when exactly and for how long will be sent to neurons. And this is also transformed by digital to analog converter into electrical impulses, which are sent through electrodes to the neurons. So this is kind of, if we can say it, easy, and it was done since actually 100 years, some kind of variation of this. Of course, we have huge improvement in how precise and how complex the electrodes can be, electrode system. Sometimes they can be also very expensive, but the general principle is possible for since very long time. And it was for long, and actually it's still done for long time, since long time, on electrophysiology. So this is a field in biology where you try to measure electrical activity of some tissue. So you can measure muscles or neurons in such a way. And so that was quite widely used, and it's still used quite widely in biology. But we use the same methods, but for different purpose, which is biocomputing.
Yeah, so I mean, like hypothetically thinking, for our listeners, think about a researcher in Tokyo or Bristol can log into a browser, write Python code and send some electrical signals to living human neurons that probably resided in a lab in Switzerland and get
Yes.
responses back in real time. So it's kind of like the transforming the cloud server networking architecture into a different way. It's like it's changing the paradigm of that totally. And it's very extraordinary if you think from a infrastructure or like a networking perspective. So yeah, thanks, Elena, for giving us a breakdown of how this biological, technical nuances around this new technology emerging. Now, since we're talking about processing unit and stuff, and how do these neuron systems compare today against modern AI hardware like NVIDIA GPUs or AMD GPUs and stuff? Because those are the main, processing units that's powering AI systems at this moment, right? So I just wanted to understand where that human neuron processing system, fits there.
So neurons are processing information in totally different way than digital systems. So you don't have logic gates and 0-1 system. Neurons process continuous signal. Basically, it's kind of like a time series, but it's not only time. There is also another dimension, which is space, because neurons, let's say the activity, not only timing, but also location of the active neuron, it's an information. So this is totally different. And because of this, there are so many other differences, like, for example, why it's so efficient, because it just happens that this way of processing information is more efficient. So, oh yes, and there are also many other differences, like, for example, neurons are learning continuously, while AI systems are updated globally, and then you update the whole system, so it's not a continuous process. You just make kind of like update model. Then also in neurons, there is a lot of hierarchical learning, so our brain is not considering every information with the same importance, and this is natural biological trait. So, for example, we don't always focus in our field of view on every signal, or we just not analyze. We don't analyze every signal which arrives to our brain, because that would be too much. So the brain is kind of like selective. You could say that it filtrates the information, while in computer, unless you set up algorithm, but if you don't, then actually computer analyzes every signal with the same importance. So that's also why it uses more energy. So yes, and also in neurons, you have a lot of recurrent connections, which are possible in silicon, but difficult. So there are a lot of things which make neurons, also the fact that neurons have a memory and processing in one place, when in digital computers, we have processor and memory separately. So all this contributes to the fact also that neurons are much more energy efficient.
Got it. Yeah, I think the energy efficient is a very, I think, salient factor here, because at the end of the day, if I try to compare a human neuron processing unit versus NVIDIA's H100s, like, which is probably industry standard unit at this moment, I think the energy efficiency will definitely come into the picture, especially given the fact that, we've seen that there is a huge progress in building data centers around the world, which is totally fine. But we also need to think about energy sufficiency or stuff. And maybe human neurons will be that kind of an alternative here. And again, we did not talk about the cost comparison here. So maybe that's another factor we need to take into consideration, cost wise, how is it the human neurons will be cheaper than, buying NVIDIA AI hardwares or something like that. I mean, I don't know, you guys have done any sort of analysis on that, but like to know a little bit more about that from cost standpoint.
Yes, absolutely. So that's actually the reason why we work on this project, because the energy efficiency alone doesn't make sense if it doesn't have some practical implications. So yes, because the neurons are using 1 million times less energy, they are also much, much cheaper. Even if you consider the cost of all the maintenance of the facility, it's still much cheaper than with silicon, which needs a lot of energy and also a lot of water to cool down. So we estimate that future biocomputers will be much, much cheaper. And that's actually the whole strength of the project, because even if we lower the price like 10 times compared to the competition, we will still make billions of profit, billions, because neurons can replace some of the tasks of silicon in AI. Like, for
Got it.
example, generative AI, yes, which is very expensive and very energy consuming on the digital system.
Got it. Now that's kind of like brings me to my next question, because I'm really fascinated to know about what FinalSpark currently doing in terms of doing collaboration with other AI companies and stuff. Like, for example, if I want to know that what was the first real applications that you've seen being unlocked by FinalSpark's human neuron intervention processing units, or what is there actually further on the horizon, if you share something with our listeners that what's your current collaboration looks like with the AI companies, and what you're actually kind of building with other organizations.
First, when it comes to the applications, we believe generative AI is the strongest, but we have to understand that this is assumption, because these biocomputers don't exist yet. So for the moment, we are doing fundamental research. In
Fundamental
how
research.
neurons are processing information. For example, we were able to store 1 bit of information in neurons. So this is just to give you an idea that this is early stage. And we have assumptions based on how human brain is working, where biocomputers will have applications, but this is still not proven in practice. So that's one thing. The second, when it comes to collaborations, so we invited 9 universities from all over the world to collaborate with us. We selected projects from 34 candidates, and we were very happy with this interest because these people can access remotely our lab, and they do research. The first paper was published recently, and it's on our website also cited. And what was really interesting also, that we started to get more and more requests from all over the world, and now we actually are renting a neuro platform. This is how we call our lab. and we're renting the access to Neuro platform, different companies and individuals, and also universities who are interested in doing research on how neurons process information. And all of them have some different assumptions because there are many things you can test when you talk about this biocomputer. It's really an area of very active research, and all of them have some ideas, and some of them have also commercial ideas for the future products. So yes, they come to us, but what is really important, people who come to us, they need to have some ideas. So we don't sell ideas. We have, of course, our internal R&D, which is focused also on patents, but people who come to us, they have all some own ideas on how to work with neurons, what to do with them to get some interesting results.
Okay. No, that's interesting. Because the main reason I asked the question, because let's say in future, Nvidia or AMD or Taiwan Semiconductor, those companies
Mhm.
could possibly, start a collaboration with your company and maybe at least reach out to you with an idea, and like, who knows that there might be a way to power human neurons and silicon processing units can work side by side. So that's kind of like the main reason I asked about that, what current collaboration you have and what is the future roadmap looks like. So moving on to that, now we talked about human derived neurons raises both curiosity and caution. How is FinalSpark thinking about bioethics, consent, regulation, and boundaries as this technology evolves?
So for the moment, there are no rules, actually no legislation specific to biocomputing, which I think is perfectly understandable because this biocomputers is still area of active research. So it would
Correct.
be difficult to make the rules for something what doesn't exist yet fully. And we actually are getting ahead of this, absolutely, because I think it's very important. It's very important to be prepared for the future. And it's normal that every new technology is bringing new questions and some need for new regulations, maybe even. So what we did, we put a lot of effort to reach out to philosophers to encourage them to work on this, on the ethics and philosophy of biocomputing. And what they say us is the main observation, let's say, is that humans always interacted with technology, and we maybe sometimes don't realize this because we consider technology only as things which are the newest. But actually, since ever human existed, they always had some tools, even if they were very simple. Kind of technology was always part of us. And today, for example, we have smartphones, which are kind of like extension of us, you could say today. Like today is sometimes really hard when you don't have internet connection. For example, when you're exploring the city, like today everyone is using Google Maps. Many of us don't have orientation anymore. And this is kind of like really integral part of us now. I think it's very easy to get used to technology once we start to use it. So yes, so I think it was always part of us and it was always an extension. And of course, when you talk about living neurons, you can start to ask question, where is the border between human and machine? And maybe we have to redefine this border. What is this? But we are not the only one, I can say, because, for example, people are also trying to put muscle cells in the robots. So, this kind of stuff are not totally unique for us, that you put some biological elements to the machine. Another thing is that we also put a lot of artificial elements into our bodies. For example, today, I think the field of prosthetic is the best illustration, which is actually fantastic. People who lost their legs or hands, they can have a replacement. And I think this is absolutely amazing that these things can be done today. So, technology is always interacting with, we interact with technology all the time, and there are for sure technical elements in our bodies. Some of us, or a heart pacemaker or anything. Or maybe in the future, there will be some biological elements in the machines. So I think it will just require for us to get used to this, because I think that for every technology, the biggest barrier is always the resistance of the society. And I even see this now when I sometimes post some robots on social media, to show people, how innovation, some updates about innovation. I see that there is a lot of resistance that people don't really like it. If you show them real robot, like not from the movie, but the real one, you say, oh, look, it's already in our world. So I think every technology is creating resistance at the beginning. Also, like cars, for example, people wanted to use horses and they were not happy that we have cars. So it's normal and it's human nature because we are a bit afraid of new things because maybe they can be dangerous. So yes, I think for society, there is always some resistance, and technology needs to be somehow kind of like adapted. It doesn't happen quickly. But for sure, in 100 years, we will see differently the kind of like interplay between technology and humans. I'm sure about this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, technology is something is it has to be adaptive, and of course, the human mind needs to be more like receptive to kind of adapting those technology and adapting those ideas that can bring forth some revolutionary concepts. Now, just to piggyback on that, do you envision a future where silicon, quantum, and biological computing coexist in a shared ecosystem, specializing in what they do best?
Yes, absolutely. I think generally the future is going to be like that. A diverse hardware, diverse substrate. So today we have like only digital, but in the future we will have for sure quantum computing. We will have also biocomputing, maybe some other things. And I believe I already see this trend because today when you look at the research, people are developing many new computing chips, processing chips. So they are not using only FPGA, only CPU or GPU, but there are a lot of ideas on how you can reorganize the chip. And also there are ideas how you can optimize the chip, for example, for AI, or for example, large language models, so that you can use them in your phone and things like that. So yeah, I think there will be a lot of variety in chips which are used for different purpose. And I think these technologies will be complementary. Like, for example, biocomputing will be complementary to digital. It's not going to replace absolutely everything because there are some advantages and disadvantages of neurons. For example, neurons are very slow, so we can already exclude all the applications when you need a high speed. This will not
Got it.
be biocomputing. So yes, so I believe there will be interplay between different types of chips, different technologies. Definitely believe in this.
Okay, that's good to know. And so now, before we wrap up this episode, the final question I would like to ask you is that what do you think that if this particular thing clicks, if this is going to be the new paradigm of like computing processing unit powered by human neuron? So how do you think this? What do you want our listeners to imagine? Like if they think about from their current interaction with the computer and stuff, how would that change if these things will succeed and become more mainstream?
So what will change is the bill for sure for AI. We don't feel it yet that AI is expensive because a lot of models in AI are in the adoption phase. For example,
Uh-huh.
ChatGPT lost I think over 30 billion since it started. So we don't realize this, that currently the AI is cheap because it's adoption phase, but at some point it will become expensive. And also once we want to use it more, then it will be even more expensive. So might not be accessible for everyone. So the biggest difference, which I would expect from biocomputing, is accessible, cheap artificial intelligence. And that I think will become important problem very soon.
Got it. It was really a fascinating, thought-provoking conversation with you, Dr. Elena.
Thank you so much.
Before I kind of wrap up this episode, I would like to know that how can our listeners find you and how they can interact with you or reach out to you to know more about FinalSpark's journey ahead.
So it's very easy to get in touch. I'm on LinkedIn, of course. It's very easy. And then also we have website finalspark.com, which is great repository of many information about our projects, about what we are doing and why it's important. We have also technical documentation for engineers. So yes, we also encourage people to go on the website finalspark.com, also fill in the form, contact form. We answer every email. We can just send you the reading materials, or if you want, we can also answer questions. So yes, I highly encourage to get in touch.
Thanks, Dr. Elena. And for our listeners, I would share the Elena's LinkedIn profile, her personal blog, even Final Spark website link in the
Absolutely.
podcast
Yeah.
description. So please take a look at it. And if you really like this kind of episode where we are talking about intersection of science and technology, and if it deserves a wider audience, please feel free to share this episode with your network. So I'm going to wrap up for now. So this is Sam, your host for the channel Data Science with Sam. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and feel free to bring up with new ideas and thoughts that you want me to share in my upcoming episodes. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.